Good evening, and welcome in to Butts Talk. It's the offseason. Congratulations to the national champions, the Clemson Tigers. Tonight's show will feature, simply, the best games, in my opinion, week by week. So, let's get started. Week 1 featured a lot of interesting matchups. However, the best game in Week 1 was Sunday, September 4th, down in Austin, Texas. Number 10, Notre Dame, came up short against the Longhorns, falling 47-50 in 2 overtimes. Tyrone Swoops, the 18-wheeler for Texas, scored on a 6-yard touchdown run in double overtime to win the game for the Longhorns. And we thought that Texas was back, but boy, were we wrong. The next week, we head up to Fort Worth, where the Razorbacks of Arkansas traveled to face TCU in another double overtime game where Arkansas won 41-38 on the road. Austin Allen ran 5 yards for the winning score in double OT when Arkansas pulled out that 41-38 win. It was a great game. Austin Allen pretty much played as good as he ever has. 223 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Week 3. Some could definitely argue against this one, but hands down, the best game of Week 3 was when number 22 Oregon headed to Lincoln and faced Nebraska, where they came up short 35-32. This game was the start of a miserable downfall for Oregon and led to Mark Helfrich losing his job. Oregon missed several extra points, 2-point conversion attempts in this game, which really was the difference. It was embarrassing, really. Nebraska won 35-32. If Oregon would have just kicked the PATs on the however many, every time they scored, they would have won the game. But Nebraska took advantage. They went out and they won. Week 4, down in Tucson, Arizona. This game wasn't talked about very much, but it was actually very impactful on the playoff race. Number 9 at the time, Washington, won in overtime, 35-28 against a lackluster Arizona team. But this was the game that really proved them to be a good elite program. Jacob Browning hit Dante Pettis on a 4-yard touchdown in overtime. And that was their Pac-12 opener. It was a great game, back and forth. Washington probably should have won bigger than they did. They really shouldn't have gone to overtime, but overall it was a good game. Week 5, up to that point, the game of the year. Number 3, Louisville, heads in to Death Valley to face the Clemson Tigers, number 5. Man, what a game. Deshaun Watson threw for 5 touchdowns in that one, 306 yards. Lamar Jackson, the eventual Heisman Trophy winner, played great as well with 295 passing yards and 162 rushing yards. Clemson led 28-10 at halftime, but Louisville came back from that 18-point deficit. But Clemson scored 2 touchdowns in the final 7 minutes of the game as they rallied back to win 42-36 at home and taking control of the ACC Atlantic. This was a very impactful game on the playoff outcome. Week 6, down in Miami, where Florida State, number 23, already had 2 losses. They lost the week before to North Carolina, and of course had been crushed by Louisville. but they went down to Miami and won 20-19. It was an entertaining game to watch. Miami scored very close with a minute 38 left in the game to make it 20-19. All they needed was an extra point to tie the game, and it was blocked. And Florida State escaped Miami with a much-needed win. They won 20-19. In Week 7, we head back to Clemson for what was it was a fantastic finish, really. It was a heroic effort by Clemson. They won 24-17 in overtime as NC State missed a 33-yard field goal that would have won the game for them, but instead they went to overtime, tied at 17. Clemson scored a touchdown on their first OT possession and then picked it off in the end zone to win the game. Week 8, down in Lubbock, Texas, number 16 Oklahoma took on the Texas Tech Red Raiders, and man, it was a high-scoring game. Oklahoma ended up winning 66-59, but it was back and forth. Baker Mayfield went 27 for 36 with 545 yards passing and 7 touchdowns. What was more impressive, Patrick Mahomes for Texas Tech, 52 for 88, 734 yards and 5 touchdowns and a loss. Astonishing. However, Oklahoma did win that one 66-59. The next week, we head to Tallahassee, Florida, where the Clemson Tigers, ranked number 3 at the time, took on the 12th-ranked Florida State Seminoles. Boy, it was a good game. Clemson had to rally back for this win also. Deshaun Watson had 430 yards of total offense as they held off the Seminoles 37-34. But Clemson, once again, had to come from behind to win. It was a very entertaining game to watch. Clemson did trail at one point by 8 points. Dalvin Cook for Florida State had a phenomenal game, 4 touchdowns rushing, 169 yards on 19 carries. But Clemson did win the game. It was great. In Week 10, in my opinion, maybe the best game of the regular season. This one kept me on the edge of my seat the whole time. You guessed it. Number 1, Alabama. Number 13, LSU. Yes, Alabama did win 10-0. LSU did not score. What was so fun was the defense. You just couldn't wait to see who scored first. Then, when Jalen Hurts broke loose for a 21-yard touchdown run to break the scoreless tie in the fourth, that's when you knew it was over. Alabama won it 10-0. And obviously points were hard to come by. And yards were too. Jalen Hurts only threw for 107 yards, but he rushed for 114. Leonard Fournette, the All-American running back, only rushed for 35 yards on 17 carries. He was stuffed by that Alabama defense. In Week 11, we head back to Clemson, South Carolina. Boy, it sure seems like they played a lot of close games this year, where they were actually upset at home by the Pittsburgh Panthers. Clemson was ranked number 2 at the time, but Chris Blewett for Pitt nailed a 48-yard field goal with 6 seconds on the clock to beat Clemson 43-42 in Death Valley. It was astonishing. Lucky for Clemson, though, number 3 Michigan and number 4 Washington lost that same day, so this game really had no effect on the playoff. In Week 12, this had to be one of the best finishes of the season in Salt Lake City. Oregon, struggling on the year, comes into 12th-ranked Utah, who only had 2 losses at the time. But Justin Herbert hit Darren Carrington for a 17-yard touchdown pass with just 2 seconds remaining to give Oregon a 30-28 upset victory over number 12, Utah. Now, it was a phenomenal catch, which made it even better, and the fact that it was the game winner was great. Oregon really needed that win. However, Helfrich still got fired. But Oregon won the game 30-28 just because of that phenomenal touchdown grab. If you haven't seen that, you need to look that up. Darren Carrington making that phenomenal touchdown grab. Week 13, rivalry week. I mean, this one's pretty easy. I think everyone can agree on this. Number 3, Michigan. Number 2, Ohio State. The game. And it really lived up to the hype. It went to double overtime. Ohio State won 30-27. Have you ever seen something more electrifying than Curtis Samuel's 15-yard touchdown run after that controversial 4th and 1 call? Man, it was a good game. It was low scoring in regulation. J.T. Barrett didn't really play a great game, only passed for 124 yards. But really, defense won it for Ohio State. And this really got them into the playoff. It was great. It was phenomenal. Moving on to championship weekend. There were a lot of good matchups on championship weekend, but the most intriguing to me was the Big Ten championship game. That was number 6, Wisconsin, number 7, Penn State. I thought, as did so many other people, thought that maybe the winner of this game would make the playoff even with 2 losses. But they still didn't. It was a great game, though. Penn State trailed 28-7 at one point, but came back and won 38-31. Trace McSorley passed for 384 yards, only had 9 incompletions and 4 touchdowns. It was a phenomenal game to watch. It was great. One of the best of the year, by far. Wisconsin dominated, really, the whole first half and gave the game away to Penn State. We move into bowl season. The best non-New Year's Six / playoff game, in my opinion, was the Birmingham Bowl. USF, South Florida, took on South Carolina in Birmingham, Alabama. And South Florida 10-2. They really were hoping that they could get this signature win over an SEC team, and they did. 46-39. They really should have beaten them worse because they dominated pretty much the whole game. It was 29-14 at one point. And man, they just, South Carolina wouldn't go away. It got to 39-21, but South Carolina came back, sent it to OT, tied at 30. Tied at 39, and South Florida ended up winning the game, though. Quentin Flowers played phenomenal. 23 for 32, 261 yards. The best New Year's Six game? Easy. The Rose Bowl, number 9, SC, number 5, Penn State. Boy, what a great game. These two teams were bounce-back teams this year, and they played, and it was great. Penn State dominated that third quarter, went up 42-27 at one point, and then lost on a last-second field goal by Matt Bormeister, 52-49. SC won. But of course, the best of the best was the national championship. Number 2 Clemson beat number 1 Alabama 35-31 on that amazing last-second touchdown pass to Hunter Renfrow by Deshaun Watson. It will be a legendary play forever. Well, that's all I've got for tonight. I'll see you next week. This has been Butts Talk. I'm Nick Butts.